The letter sat on the kitchen table, a plain, white envelope that looked harmless at first glance. But when Pastor John Owens opened it, his entire world shattered. The words on the page didn't make sense, not at first. His hands trembled as he read them again. His 3 children, the ones he had raised, loved, and called his own, weren't his. They belonged to someone else, and that someone was his own father. Pastor John Owens stood at his pulpit each Sunday, his broad shoulders filling his crisp white suit, his voice rolling like thunder through Miami's largest megachurch. Faith Light hadn't always been this grand. 10 years ago, it was just a humble storefront with folding chairs. Now, crystal chandeliers sparkled above marble floors, and thousands filled the pews, seeking guidance from a man they believed could do no wrong. To his congregation, John was living proof of God's grace. His wife Sarah moved through church gatherings like an angel, her gentle southern accent and perfectly styled blonde hair making everyone feel at home. Their children, Michael, James, and little Emma, sat front row every Sunday, back straight, Bibles open, the very picture of devotion. The Miami Herald called them Florida's first family of faith. Photographs of the Owens family smiled down from the church walls. John breaking ground on their new youth center, Sarah organizing hurricane relief, the children helping at soup kitchens. They were what everyone aspired to be. But behind John's commanding smile, behind the polished sermons and designer suits, something was cracking. Like Miami's foundations, built on limestone that slowly dissolved in secret, underground rivers, perfection was a fragile thing. It started with suspicion, a gut feeling John couldn't shake. The children were growing up, and sometimes, when he looked at them, something felt off. Maybe it was the way his youngest son's eyes didn't quite match his. Maybe it was the slight hesitations in Sarah's voice when he asked about their birth dates, the way she avoided his gaze. So he did what any man desperate for the truth would do. He hired a private investigator. He hadn't expected much. Maybe a confirmation of what he already knew, or even just peace of mind. What he got instead was a nightmare. The DNA test results were clear, undeniable. John Owens was not the father of his 3 children. But the true horror lay in the next line of the report. The biological father was Thomas Owens, John's own father. John felt like he had been punched in the gut. His breath came in short, ragged gasps. His father? The man he had idolized? The man who had taught him about honor, integrity, and faith? And Sarah, how long had she been hiding this from him? How long had she been lying to his face? His hands clenched into fists as he walked into the living room, where Sarah sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone as if everything was normal. Sarah. His voice was barely above a whisper. She looked up. Yeah. John threw the envelope onto the table. Explain this? Sarah's face paled. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then, with a slow exhale, she leaned back and looked at him. Not with regret, not even with shame, but with something colder. Something resigned. I didn't want you to find out. John's vision blurred with rage. That's all you have to say? She shrugged. Your father, he had his way with me. It just happened. The words sliced through him. His fists trembled at his sides. His father had his way with his wife, for years behind his back. His children weren't his. His entire life had been a lie. John turned away, his chest heaving. His world was spinning, breaking apart piece by piece. And inside him, something dark began to take root. The days passed in a blur. John stopped going to church. He ignored his congregation, ignored his responsibilities, ignored God. He was drowning in his own mind, his thoughts playing on repeat. Sarah's cold confession, his father's betrayal, the faces of his children who would never truly be his. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. When he closed his eyes, he saw them together, Sarah and his father, whispering in the dark, laughing at him. The rage inside him grew, coiling tighter and tighter until it became something alive, something unstoppable. Then one night he picked up the phone. His father answered on the 3rd ring. John? John's voice was ice. I know what you did. There was silence. Then a deep, steady breath from the other end. Son, listen. John gritted his teeth. You'll regret this. You'll regret everything. That night, John sat in the darkness of his bedroom, staring at the ceiling. Sarah lay beside him, fast asleep, unaware of the storm raging inside him. He reached under his pillow, his fingers curled around the handle of the knife. His heartbeat was steady now. The anger had settled into something else, something clearer. He had been wronged. His own blood had stolen his family from him, and now he would take it back, piece by piece. The house was silent. The only sound was the slow, steady breathing of Sarah as she lay curled up in bed. John stood over her, watching, waiting. Then, in one swift motion, he brought the knife down. The room erupted in chaos. Sarah's eyes snapped open, her mouth forming a silent scream. The blade struck again and again. Blood splattered across the bed, the walls, his hands. By the time the silence returned, Sarah was gone. But John wasn't finished yet. The drive to his father's house felt like a dream, a nightmare playing out in slow motion. Thomas Owens opened the door, his face wrinkled with worry. "John, what's going on? What did you do?" John didn't answer. He stepped inside. The door shut behind him. The police arrived hours later, responding to a frantic call from a neighbor who had heard the screams. What they found inside was something out of a horror movie. Sarah's body had been dismembered, the scene too gruesome for even the most seasoned detectives. But the real shock came when they searched Thomas Owens' house. They found his body in the same condition. John had snapped. The trial was swift. John pleaded guilty, his once commanding voice now empty, hollow. The judge showed no mercy. Life in prison. No chance of parole. His children, his father's children, were left to grow up without the man who had raised them. The church fell apart. His name was erased from the community. And in the end, the man once seen as a pillar of faith was nothing more than a murderer consumed by rage. A man broken by betrayal. The case of John Owens became a chilling reminder. Betrayal, when left to fester, can destroy everything. Even a man of God can fall. And when he does, the world will never forget. If you enjoyed this gripping true crime story, don't forget to share and subscribe for more haunting tales.